This one?
Yes.
May I? No? No, Abby?
Right here.
It doesn't work. Abby, sorry, this one or this one or something else?
So
This button?
that is the right.
Seems so. Try to press it.
But it doesn't. No, okay.
You tried maybe pushing it twice. Did that work now?
This one? Why?
It looks like the master. Now it's red.
Okay.
Instead of green.
Yeah.
No, it's red. That means it should be green if you want to put. Now it's green. Yeah. But here it's maybe it's a different color. I don't know. Now it's red here also.
Is everybody able to hear me? Yes, great. Okay, thank you for your patience as we are getting started. We will have an event right after this one, just the same way that the one before happened. And so we will have to move a little bit quickly with the time, and time is ticking. But thank you for your patience. Thank you so much for being here. This is a side event on human rights in Azerbaijan, which will consider the Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno Karabakh as an international mechanism for upholding the right of return for 150,000 people displaced from their homeland. My name is Abby McDougall. I am the UN representative for Christian Solidarity International, CSI, the NGO that's hosting this event today. Whether you're here in person or you're joining online, we're grateful to have you with us because it's an important conversation, and so thank you for taking the time to be here today. The live stream is being recorded, so the full event and the Q&A will be publicly available to view online after the event. If you want, there are handouts up by the door that have the QR code if you want to have that link available for quick reference or to share. During the event, we ask those of you in the room here to not take any photos or make any recordings of the event. The only two people who should be taking photos are the woman in the blue sweater and the scarf and the gentleman right here. They're part of CSI, they're authorized to do so. We're very honored to have the distinguished panel that we do here today. Our first speaker on farthest away from me will be Mr. Erich Vontobel, who serves as a member of the Swiss Parliament. He is a national councillor for Zurich, where he previously served for 11 years on the Cantonal Council. Mr. Vontobel is one of the two co-sponsors of the parliamentary motion that became the Swiss Peace Initiative that we're discussing today. Our second speaker will be Dr. Artak Beglaryan, who is the president of the Artsakh Union NGO, an advocacy group which promotes the collective rights and interests of the people displaced from Nagorno Karabakh. 2 years ago this week, in September 2023, Mr. Beglaryan was himself forcibly displaced from Nagorno Karabakh, along with the rest of the Armenian population. He formerly served as the Human Rights Ombudsman and later the Minister of State for the Republic of Nagorno Karabakh. He also serves as a Council of Europe expert. Then we have Mr. Nicolas Walder. He serves as a national councillor for Geneva in the Swiss Parliament. He's dedicated the time to this important conversation today, despite the latest round of parliamentary elections happening only yesterday. So thank you so much for making the time to be here. In addition to his commitment to environmentalism, he deeply values solidarity and dialogue. He also previously spent 10 years working for the ICRC Red Cross. Finally, we will hear from a virtual participant, Dr. Paul Williams, who needs no introduction in this room. But Dr. Williams is a professor at American University and the co-founder of the pro bono law firm PILPG, the Public International Law and Policy Group. With a JD from Stanford Law School and a PhD from the University of Cambridge, Dr. Williams is a world-renowned peace negotiation lawyer who has assisted over 24 parties in major international peace negotiations and has advised more on the drafting and the implementation of post-conflict constitutions. At the end of our event, we will save a bit of time for questions. And then, as mentioned, afterwards, we'll need to exit the room quickly and hope to continue those conversations with you all outside, as the next side event will begin directly at noon. But for the rest of this hour, we are focused on how the international community can meaningfully support the right to return for the people of Nagorno Karabakh. To do so, we're going to take a close look at one specific mechanism that already exists, and that's the Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno Karabakh. To get us all on the same starting point for this topic, I'm going to very briefly share an overview of some history before turning the mic over to our speakers. So only a few years after the Armenian genocide of 1915, Armenia became part of the newly established Soviet Union. The new Soviet rulers decreed the ethnically Armenian region of Nagorno Karabakh would become part of the Azerbaijan Soviet around it, though still operating as an autonomous oblast. When the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, the people of Nagorno Karabakh voted overwhelmingly in favor of becoming the independent Republic of Artsakh, following the existing laws of the time. Azerbaijan, however, refused to concede that territory. After the brutal First Nagorno-Karabakh War ended in 1994, a period of conflict followed, and during the past 5 years, that conflict has escalated and culminated in the complete expulsion of the remaining 120,000 Armenians from the region in September 2023. Since then, Azerbaijan has occupied Nagorno-Karabakh, destroying the physical landmarks and property of displaced Armenians in direct violation of the International Court of Justice's order issued on November 17th, 2023. Over the past year, Switzerland has taken a stand on behalf of the displaced community by launching the Swiss Peace Initiative. This multi-party initiative has received support from across the political spectrum, from parliamentarians from the Socialists, the Greens, the People's Party, the Center Party, and more. It mandates that the Swiss government hold a forum for negotiation directly between the Azerbaijani government and the representatives of the displaced community, the majority of whom now reside in Armenia. On August 8th of this year, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan met with President Donald Trump at the White House in Washington, D.C. to discuss a peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia. But the question of what would happen in Nagorno-Karabakh was not addressed. We gather here today 2 years after the entire Armenian population fled their homes, with the ability to do something, to act. The Swiss Peace Initiative is a necessary complement to the US-led peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and it needs international support to succeed. And we're asking you today to join this cause. So, Mr. Vontobel, I will now hand this conversation over to you.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, in July, I had the privilege of giving my first speech on this subject in Washington, D.C. Today, here in Geneva, at one of the main centers of the United Nations system, I am deeply grateful that we can once again bring this vital issue back to the attention of the international community. Thank you for being here. My short address is entitled From Promise to Peace, the birth of the Swiss Peace Initiative. This journey began in January 2024, when I was given responsibility within our parliamentary group for matters concerning Armenia and Nagorno Karabakh in the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Swiss National Council. Later that year, in autumn, my wife and I decided to travel to Armenia. We wanted to get an impression of the country and see with our own eyes what was happening. On that journey, we met with politicians and with refugees from Nagorno Karabakh. They were visibly traumatized. They said to me, please do something so that we may return, so that we may see our cemeteries and our schools again. One woman showed me a video of her former home, now occupied by another family. That sight broke my heart. In that moment, I knew I want and I must act. I promised her and the refugees that I would do what I could. Only 1 week after our return, I submitted a motion in the Foreign Affairs Committee. The goal? An international peace forum for the displaced people of Nagorno Karabakh. To my surprise, a majority supported the idea, but there was also opposition. One colleague said to me, Erich, withdraw the motion. It will never pass Parliament. But for me, withdrawal was not an option. I had given my word in Armenia. The displacement of over 100,000 people is a clear violation of international law. If Switzerland simply accepts this and does not even offer its good services or good offices, we lose our credibility. And so the motion was adopted in both chambers of Parliament with broad cross-party support. That is how the Swiss Peace Initiative was born. The initiative does not call for sanctions. It does not call for interventions. It calls for a table, a place of dialogue, a place where even the displaced have a seat. We must act now. As US Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently warned, there remains a real risk of renewed conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Diplomacy is the only path forward. I represent a Christian party. For me, freedom of religion is as important as it is to you and as it is to President Trump. He promised to end the ethnic cleansing of Christians and to restore peace. That speaks deeply to my heart. The Swiss Peace Initiative offers the international community an opportunity to support peace without taking on direct risk. Switzerland is neutral. Switzerland has credibility, and Switzerland has the expertise to organize such a forum. But what we need now is broad international support. Our interests and values are aligned. We want peace. We want stability. We want human dignity to be respected. That is why I ask you today, please publicly support the Swiss Peace Initiative. Let us help Azerbaijan and the displaced population enter into a constructive dialogue without violence, without litigation. With your support, we can reaffirm religious freedom and cooperation as cornerstones of peace and prosperity in the region. Yes, a peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia has recently been launched. This is good, but it must not leave aside the issue of return for the displaced people of Nagorno Karabakh. In 2023, the international community strongly condemned the ethnic cleansing in Nagorno Karabakh. It affirmed that the displaced have the right to return to their homeland and to live there in peace and security. With the Swiss Peace Initiative, we seek to remind the international community this problem is not yet solved. And without solving it, there can be no lasting peace. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for taking up this concern, and I thank you for helping to ensure that the displaced people of Nagorno Karabakh may soon return home, back to their villages, back to their communities, back to their lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vontobel, for your dedication and support. Our next speaker will be Dr. Artak Beglaryan.
Is it okay? Yes. All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here, and thanks to the Christian Solidarity International for organizing this event, and thanks to the Swiss parliamentarians, and especially Mr. Erich Vontobel and Mr. Nicolas Walder, for raising the voice of our people and of the humanity. I'm speaking here on the behalf of a people who just recently, after millennia living in the homeland, now is facing the greatest challenge for existence. What happened? After the 2020 aggression and partial ethnic cleansing, in 2023 and the end of 2022, Azerbaijan started a blockade against the people of Nagorno Karabakh, Artsakh, and after almost 10 months of blockade, Azerbaijan started an aggression and then the forcible displacement of our people, which took place less than a week. And over 120,000 of our people, the entire people, fled. And the independent voices of the international community, such as the International Association of the Genocide Scholars, the first prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Luis Moreno Ocampo, the UN's first special advisor on genocide prevention, Juan Mendes, assessed these events as genocide. Freedom House, the European Parliament, and a number of other institutions assessed them as ethnic cleansing. Our people wanted to stay in our homeland peacefully. Yet the Russian peacekeepers failed to ensure security guarantees for our people, and the international community, primarily the UN Security Council, failed to protect our people and ensure guarantees for us. And the geopolitical rivalry overshadowed the international duty to protect a civilian population. What we want simple, just, and consistent thing with the international law. We want to return our homes. But we don't want that scattered and individual and afraid, but we want to live in our homes securely, with dignity, collectively, peacefully, and sustainably. Notably, just recently, a survey among the Armenian refugees living in Armenia showed that over 87% of our people want to return home. This is a concrete and measurable thing showing the will of our people and which should be respected. What are the foundations of our return? Our return is not derived from politics. It's derived from international law. Key conventions of the international law recognize the right of all displaced people to return home. More specifically, the UN International Court of Justice order of November 17, 2023, ordered Azerbaijan to ensure prompt, safe, and expeditious and unimpeded return of the Nagorno Karabakh people. Additionally, the UN Human Rights Council, 40 member states, on October 11, 2023, with their joint statement, including Armenia and Switzerland, including 3 permanent members of the UN Security Council, France, the UK, and the US, stated that Nagorno-Karabakh people should return their homes voluntarily, safely, with dignity, and sustainably. And we highly appreciate also the Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno-Karabakh people, based on the motion of 2442/59 passed by the Swiss Parliament and calling for International Peace Forum for Nagorno-Karabakh. This is the solution, neutral and inclusive, which just we need in order to ensure to establish an international mechanism for preparing our return. Importantly, this is a binding motion for the Swiss government, and our people expect certain progress in this regard. What we have currently, even after all of those political and legal foundations, our people remain fully ignored and marginalized. International documents, including the documents, the agreement and the declaration mediated by Washington and signed by Azerbaijan and Armenia on August 8, speak about the peace, but fully ignore the primary victim and primary party of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, the Armenian forcibly displaced people of Nagorno-Karabakh. It's very good, certainly, that certain issues of the conflict are solved, but ignoring the primary victim and party of the conflict doesn't mean sustainable and comprehensive peace. This peace will mean inclusive and just process, which will put the return of the people at the center of any kind of settlement. What are the conditions of our return? In order to ensure meaningful and sustainable peace, I believe, and we believe, that certain conditions should be ensured for the return. Firstly, we need strong international security guarantees with a mandated international presence in order to ensure sustainable and peaceful life there. Secondly, we need to exclude any Azerbaijani genocidal control in order to ensure any kind of renewal of crimes. Thirdly, joint international and local administration in order to build trust, oversee restoration of life, and ensure human rights protection and monitor human rights protection. Fourthly, a reliable and safe land and air communication is a must with Armenia. Fifthly, demilitarization of all surrounding Azerbaijani areas in order to have genuine peaceful zone surrounding. Sixthly, we need to eradicate the anti-Armenian hate state policy in Azerbaijan to have the foundations for further reconciliation, because this policy continuously fuels anti-Armenian crimes. And seventhly, we need international efforts for justice and true reconciliation among the people in order to have the foundations for sustainable peace. Before having all of these conditions, I believe that certain steps must be implemented urgently. The first one is to ensure monitoring of protection of our cultural heritage, public and private property by the international community, which is also an order of the ICJ, in order to prevent further destruction of our property and further illegal settlement of our homes by Azerbaijan. B, we need to preserve our identity and our culture and our community living in Armenia in order to preserve our people and the identity for rebuilding it tomorrow. C, we need to release all of our state hostages who are imprisoned in Azerbaijan. D, we need sanctions over Azerbaijan and the Azerbaijani Aliyev regime in order to show that all of those mass atrocities are not remain impugned internationally. E, we need international mechanisms and platforms for real, genuine dialogue with the Nagorno Karabakh people, with the victims themselves, in order to build the foundations for our return and future sustainable peace. And F, we need to develop the Swiss Peace Initiative, which is the genuine start for this kind of platform, and also to engage the legitimate representatives of the Nagorno Karabakh people. Such kind of representatives can be democratically elected parliament members of Nagorno Karabakh or delegates elected by the parliament. Dear ladies and gentlemen, our people want to return, and the return doesn't mean just territorially to return our homes. It means certain conditions to live in our homes, and it means sustainable life and true reconciliation between Armenian and Azerbaijani people. I lost my father as a result of the war in 1990s. I lost my eyesight as a result of the war when I was 6. I lost my mother when I was 16 as a result of heart attack driven by all of those tragedies. But I don't hate the Azerbaijani people. I, even with my family and 2 kids, forcibly displaced and fled and escaped Azerbaijani prosecution or Azerbaijani abduction. Again, I don't hate Azerbaijani people, but I hate criminals. And I still believe that a just peace, a sustainable peace, an inclusive peace is possible if it's inclusive and if the voice of our people and all the victims are heard. So we need international backing. We need true international support and inclusive support in order to have peace in South Caucasus. Thank you.
Thank you for your powerful experience, your expertise, and the very clear explanation of what is happening and what needs to happen. Mr. Walder, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, dear colleague, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me here today and for your attention to such an urgent and important issue, the right of return of the Armenians of Nagorno Karabakh. For far too long, this question has been pushed aside in international discussions, including in the ongoing peace process led by the United States. But let's be clear, there can be no lasting peace without justice, and there will be no justice without recognizing the fundamental rights of displaced people. Let me briefly recall the fact, even if all of you, I think, know them already, but in the fall of 2023, as Mr. Beglaryan reminded us, over 100,000 Armenians were forced to flee their ancestral land in Nagorno Karabakh following months of humanitarian blockade and a lightning military offensive by Azerbaijan. This mass displacement, which amounted to ethnic cleansing, was accompanied by the destruction of religious and cultural sites in what appears to be a clear attempt to erase all traces of Armenian presence in the region. Despite this, today's peace talks, including the Washington statement from August 8, make no mention of the right of return, nor of the protection of the cultural and human rights of those who were displaced. It is in this context that the Swiss Parliament, true to its tradition of neutrality, mediation, and commitment to human rights, decided to take action. It is, as a Swiss parliamentarian, I'm proud to have helped to promote a motion that was proposed by my colleague Erich Vontobel, that was adopted by both chambers of our parliament in the spring of 2025. This motion, also called Swiss Peace Initiative, mandates our government to organize an international peace forum on Nagorno-Karabakh within the next 12 months. The goal of this forum is clear: to provide a space for direct talks between Azerbaijan and the legitimate representatives of the Armenian people of Nagorno-Karabakh, to place human rights, especially the rights of return, at the center of the discussions, and to ensure a safe, dignified, and lasting return of displaced people as required by the International Court of Justice in its ruling of November 2023. This is not Switzerland's first effort for peace in the region. Remember that back in 2009, our diplomacy helped facilitate the Zurich protocols between Armenia and Turkey. We are also the depository state of the Geneva Convention, which gives us both a moral and legal responsibility to uphold humanitarian law wherever it is under threat. Faced with inaction and sometimes with indifference from some major powers, our parliament wanted Switzerland to offer a neutral, credible, and law-based framework to help move forward lasting peace, not in competition, but in addition to existing bilateral talks. But let's be realistic, the motion alone is not enough. For the forum to take place and to achieve real results, we will need, of course, a strong commitment from our government to carry out the motion. We will also need the backing from third-party countries, especially since the two main parties may not welcome the initiatives. We will need the recognition from the international community, states, and international organizations alike that peace cannot be built by ignoring the fundamental rights of a displaced population. In that sense, we will need all the support from other countries, for that initiatives. And that's what I called for last week in Paris when I had 2 weeks ago, in Paris, so there was a forum, and I intervened to ask my colleagues from Belgium, from France, and other countries to intervene to their government also to support that initiative, and even to make a little bit of pressure on our government, because of course we will need goodwill, diplomatic goodwill, in order to move forward with that initiative. And finally, it is important to send a clear message from the international community that the right of return cannot be forgotten, and the crimes committed must not be unpunished. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a time when human rights are under attack in many parts of the world, in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Sudan. In this context, turning our backs on Armenians of Nagorno Karabakh would send a terrible signal that the rights of some people can be erased in silence. We must do the opposite, reaffirm the universality of human rights, support a just peace, and that is rooted in memory, recognition, and law, and work together to create the conditions for a safe return for a population whose roots in Nagorno Karabakh go back centuries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to hand the mic over to Dr. Paul Williams, who is joining us remotely.
Great. Thank you, Abby. I wanted to just start by expressing my gratitude for Christian Solidarity International. And it's a real pleasure to share the platform with Mr. Vontobel, Mr. Walder, and Dr. Beglaryan. I wanted to just start with this, and I apologize for the video being off camera. I'm not entirely sure why that might be the case, but I'll just go ahead, Abby, and continue anyways for the next 8 minutes or so. I think it's important that we realize while the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement is an important step in the right direction of peace, the current peace framework itself is quite frankly open to substantial criticism for failing in any way whatsoever to acknowledge the displacement of the approximately 150,000 Armenians from Nagorno Karabakh. In looking through the agreement, I was quite surprised that there are no provisions for the right of return, cultural preservation, or justice for ethnic cleansing that has occurred. It also seems to include the recognition of Azerbaijan's sovereignty over Nagorno Karabakh at the constitutional level without even addressing any of the questions relating to the Artsakh population who live in Nagorno Karabakh and were displaced. This is why I'm so enthusiastic about the Swiss dialogue. It's an essential platform for confronting this gap directly. Interestingly, the exclusion of the right of return of the Artsakh Armenians from the peace process runs directly contrary to the stated objectives of international law and most modern peace frameworks. The undefined recognition of Azerbaijan's sovereignty over Nagorno-Karabakh, on the other hand, raises some serious and urgent constitutional issues. What is the status of the Artsakh Armenians who live there, and what mechanisms will ensure their rights are not erased or neglected? Now, the Swiss Peace Initiative offers a platform to raise a number of these critical issues. The first of which will be, how will the right of return be acknowledged and actually operationalized in practice? The Swiss Peace Platform provides an opportunity to be very specific about the legal, physical, and material conditions that must be in place to ensure a prompt return. And it provides an opportunity to further clarify and to establish a role for international actors so that they can monitor and enforce the safe, voluntary, and dignified return. Now, oftentimes individuals will ask, well, why is this issue of return so important? And the reason is that at the core, for many of the displaced Artsakh Armenians, return is not just a legal entitlement. It's a matter of identity, belonging, and quite frankly, survival. Denial of this identity severs their connection to their ancestral lands and their cultural heritage. And there are some very practical consequences of this severing of the connection. The first is the obvious one, that it deepens grievances and fuels future instability. The lack of return prevents community reintegration, which is essential for building a durable peace through trust and coexistence. And, as Mr. Walden has pointed out, it continues to weaken the international community's moral and legal standing, and any future negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, or quite frankly, any negotiations around the world, as the international community is seen as abandoning core humanitarian principles like the right of return. Now, in order to be successful, it would be highly useful for the Swiss dialogue to explore a very structured process for return and not simply a vague post-conflict aspiration or statement of principles. The Swiss peace dialogue should work to articulate very specific conditions that must be created to enable safe and voluntary return, and develop a mechanism for accountability, particularly accountability for Azerbaijan's obligations of international law, especially in light of the fact that the peace agreement seems to extricate Azerbaijan from those obligations. And that platform is a very important avenue for identifying, as Dr. Beglaryan had noted, external mechanisms, international organizations, monitoring forces, and maybe even peacekeeping forces that are needed to supervise and support the return process. The Swiss Peace Initiative, therefore, can serve as a very viable venue for, first, reaffirming the legal basis for return under instruments like the guiding principles on international displacement and the Panero principles. It's been mentioned by all three members of the panel that there is a very clear legal basis for the right of return. That should be at the top of the list of principles that the Swiss Peace Initiative facilitates. Second, identifying very practical steps to restoring property and civil rights. As Mr. Vontobel noted, these are real people with real homes that they have been ethnically cleansed from. There needs to be a very specific set of practical steps to get those real people back into their homes. And then finally, the Swiss Peace Initiative can benefit the process by being very specific on the timing, the location, the modalities of return, so that displaced communities can begin to move back. I'll just conclude with a note that ultimately, the right of return must be treated not as a concession to be dealt with at the negotiation table or bargained away, but as an actual cornerstone of justice and reconciliation. The Swiss Peace Dialogue is an impressive opportunity to elevate this issue to the level of strategic priority for the international community. Thank you, Abby, for giving me the opportunity to share these brief thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, so much for speaking with us today and joining us, I know, in the wee hours of the morning for your time. We're so grateful to have your voice and your insights. We're going to shift into a time of questions. And so I am going to see if this timer works on the screen to test it. In the other building, there's a clock that shows. I'm not seeing it showing up in the room right now, but so I will start the timer when each question happens so we can keep things moving, so that we can get hopefully a few questions in. And if you can just raise your hand, I will call on you and we can direct your question to a specific panelist if you would like to, or to the group at large, but it's probably easiest if you direct it to a specific panelist. So we'll go ahead and open the floor for questions. While people are thinking, Artak, would you be willing to share a little bit more about what is currently being done among the displaced community as what the current status is as people are waiting for this right of return to take place?
You mean in Armenia?
Yes.
Is my mic on?
Um,
Sorry, thank you. Actually, in Armenia, we have scattered living. We don't have community living, compact living. And in all Armenian communities and villages and towns, there are refugees living. And in the beginning, Armenian government and some international organizations provided certain support. And by this May, the Armenian government every month were providing over 100 euro per person for renting purposes. And now they have stopped this financial support, and the humanitarian situation is getting worse every day, because we still don't have housing conditions, and more than 100,000 people still live with renting, which means that the unemployment is very high, over 60 up to 70% of the people. I mean, people who are able to work don't have employment. And in this situation, the poverty among the Artsakh people is increasing now. I don't have certain number to say, I mean, officially, but based on some expert assessment, the poverty among our people is between 70–80%. In the case when the average poverty rate in Armenia, excluding the refugees, is over 23%. But even in this situation, people want to live in Armenia, to base there, because people think that in order to be able to return, it's a must to be in Armenia and to keep the identity, to preserve the identity and community living there in Armenia. And as I said, 87% of the people want to return. But we also have immigration from Armenia, huge level, because of this humanitarian situation. This is the case.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Right. Any questions? Yes, thank you.
Hello, can you listen to me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. It was really interesting, this panel. My name is Alejandra and I come from a NGO of human rights. And I was just wondering if some of you could explain to me, do you believe initiatives like this, like the Swiss Peace Initiative, can succeed without Azerbaijan's genuine collaboration? And if you see any willingness from Azerbaijan to engage in such a process? And I would also like to know, how would NGOs could contribute to preserving the cultural and historical identity of your people? Thanks so much.
Thank you. Do you want to take that?
I guess, yes. You can do that, I think.
You want to answer?
Will you or I should?
You. You start.
All right, thank you. Actually, we totally realize that without Azerbaijani engagement, it's impossible to have dialogue. But in order to have Azerbaijani engagement, we need pressure over Azerbaijan. And we see that they enjoy impunity, and they have not paid any price for all kind of crimes they have committed. And even, I would say, they have benefited or encouraged with number of other steps. For example, COP29 last year was organized in Baku, or August 8 declaration and agreement, the lifting of American sanctions over Azerbaijan, etc. And for sure, they now think that international community doesn't do anything. That's why I'm saying sanctions and accountability measures are must. Without having this, just using some empty words or statements, it doesn't work with this kind of dictatorial regimes. That's why the first steps should be pressure, certain real pressure over Azerbaijan. Without that, we will not get anything. Even more, one day, the Aliyev regime will attack also Armenia. And because there is no military balance, but there is no security balance, and nothing will prevent in future Aliyev to start a new aggression against sovereign territory of Armenia.
Dr. Williams, just because I know we can't see you on camera, would you like to also answer this question, or shall we leave it there?
I'll just, thanks, Abby. I'll just briefly add that that is the crucial question. How do you create a structure for the right of return without the participation of Azerbaijan? And that is why the Swiss Peace Initiative is so important. When the Americans negotiated the, let's call it a security agreement rather than a peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, they on purpose neglected this issue. It cannot stay out there unaddressed. The Swiss Peace Platform fills that void, and Switzerland is the perfect country to bring Azerbaijan to the table within the context of broader international pressure. So ideally, the United States, some of its European friends and colleagues, allies, will put that pressure on Azerbaijan, and then they come to the negotiating table that Switzerland has structured. And as Mr. Vontobel, Mr. Walden noted, the expertise exists in Switzerland to structure a very effective process for the return of refugees. So yes, Azerbaijan needs to be at the table. And of all of the platforms potentially out there, the Swiss platform is the best platform, the most desirable platform to make that happen. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. As we wrap up this event, there are some handouts and materials on your way out. Again, there's also the QR code if you want to watch or share the live stream later on the small handout, but there's more information up there that we would encourage you all to take with you. There also, if you would like more resources about the cultural heritage of the region, please feel free to talk to us and we'd be happy to provide additional information. Thank you again so much for being here, and we will head out into the hall to make space for the next event.
Thank you.